So let me make sure I have all of my stuff in order, and I think I do. I clearly need glasses, and I haven't fished them out of my bag yet. We're good there, we're good there. All right, well, welcome everyone. I appreciate you coming today. My name is Amanda Cook-Fesperman. I'm the chairperson for the IVCC diversity team. There are other diversity team members here. If you would wave, and I think they're in the background. Betsy's back there. And so the IVCC diversity team is charged with putting on events about diversity. I really have lost count. I should go back and look to see exactly how many years we've been doing the Dr. King Writing Contest, but I think we started it the year after I came here, which would have been 2002. So I think we're about 17 years that we've been doing the contest, and it's really great. I see all the entries, so I don't get to judge them. Other people do, but it's really nice to see students reflect upon diversity from a variety of different perspectives. You know, focusing on sort of modern or historical civil rights. So we appreciate if you're here and you entered. You know, it was some great entries. If you want to enter again in the future, you can. Or if you didn't enter this year and you're like, well, I could do that, well, do it, because we do it every year. So this is part of our Black History Month celebration. We have 2 more events for Black History Month coming up. We had to reschedule our keynote speaker because of all that icky weather. So let's hope that the icky weather holds off for next Monday. Nadya Valentine, she went to LP High School and went away to college. She's biracial, African American and Caucasian, and she is now a model and actress and a radio talk show host in Iowa. And she's coming to give a talk about, she calls it the black elephant in the room. And she's going to be talking about growing up in Illinois Valley, being successful, some of the struggles that she's had, but a lot of her successes. So she's a great speaker. If you can, come see her. That'll be on Monday, this next Monday at noon in CTC 124, 125. And then Wednesday will be our final event, and that is the Reader's Theater, Black is Beautiful, and that involves IVCC students and community members. It's directed by one of our part-time faculty members, Donna Stone, and they'll be doing the presentation of Black is Beautiful, and that's 12, I don't want to lie, I think it's in this room. It's this one, right? I'm pretty sure it's this room. Check the flyer, but I'm almost positive it's this one. I didn't bring the flyer with me. I apologize. So the way this will go is we'll have our winners come up, and we didn't have any ties this year. A lot of times we have like 2 or 3 ties. This year we didn't, so it might be relatively short because we just have our 3 winners. And we'll start with our 3rd place winner, and then our 2nd place winner, and then our 1st place winner. I want to get everybody in order so I don't do this wrong. And then when you're done presenting, I'll probably ask you a couple of questions, and then I'll present you with your certificate and your check. Woohoo! So we're going to start this year with our 3rd place winner, and that is Marley Theisinger. Did I say it right? Theisinger. Oh, I'm so sorry. And she is going to be reading her entry, Civil Rights Activist Ruby Nell Bridges.
Her perseverance, bravery, and intelligence made Ruby Bridges an icon in the history of civil rights when she was only 6 years old. Bridges became the first African-American child to desegregate a school in New Orleans when she entered the 1st grade after passing a test in kindergarten that was designed to prevent children of color from advancing in the education system. She was one of 6 children to pass the test and the only African-American child attending the William Frantz School. She soon would become the only child attending the class due to lingering intolerance for people of color. On November 14th of 1960, Ruby was escorted to her 1st grade class by 4 federal marshals. Bridges' mother and father were uneducated and living in poverty. Determined to provide their daughter with the opportunities withheld from them, they chose not to tell Ruby that the reason she needed protection was because of the color of her skin. She was under the impression that the crowds had gathered for a Mardi Gras parade, which enabled her to enter her new school without perceiving the gathering as racially motivated. 6-year-old Ruby spent her 1st grade year being taught by Barbara Henry, a white woman who moved to Louisiana from Boston, Massachusetts. She was sickened by the magnitude of racial hatred directed at an innocent child. Giving up on Ruby was never an option for her. Henry did everything she could to make the experience Ruby had a relatively positive one. They ate lunch together and played games during what should have been a typical recess for Ruby. A remarkable trait that Ruby Bridges has always demonstrated was her ability to forgive others and even display compassion towards those who once frightened her. Henry remembers Ruby as a courageous young girl who, quote, would come to class knowing that she would not have any children to play with, to be with, to talk to, and yet continually she came to the school happily and interested to learn whatever could be offered to her, unquote. Artist Norman Rockwell dedicated a painting of Ruby walking into her first day at school titled The Problem We All Live With, to commemorate the bold action taken by her and her family. A loan requested by former President Barack Obama to hang the work of art in the White House was granted from the Norman Rockwell Museum for the 50th anniversary of November 14, 1960. Bridges first saw the painting when she was a teenager and states that it made her feel as though she truly impacted the world in an important and necessary way. Ruby Bridges continues to fight for change in the education system through embracing diversity and promoting tolerance among students. She established the Ruby Bridges Foundation in 1999 to continue making a change in civil rights. In 2000, a ceremony held in Washington, D.C. declared her an honorary deputy marshal. Ruby continues to live every day spreading the lesson Dr. King is remembered for, that we should never judge a person by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
So Marley's actually my student, and so I know this story, but why don't you tell them about how you decided to write this and what you did in the process? Because I know you were really excited about it.
I was very excited about it. So I did not know who Ruby Bridges was prior to this opportunity. And I was, as soon as I looked up important civil rights activists, this one was prominent to me because she's not very well heard of. Like a lot of students our age don't really learn about her. We usually learn about other people.
Rosa Parks.
Yeah, exactly. Like really ones in the history books. But this one was really inspiring to me because she was 6 years old. Like she was a child when she became a civil rights activist and didn't even know it. And then there was just so many stories, and there was a video on YouTube because she's still alive, and she was talking about what she remembers of going to school and how it changed her. So I was really inspired by her. She was amazing.
Excellent. Does anyone else have any questions for Marley? So it was funny you did this, and I was on Facebook, and this was one of those things that people were sharing but trying to be good, and somebody was like, let's remember Ruby Bridges, Black History Month, but it was actually a picture of Elizabeth Eckford, who was older, which is why I knew it wasn't Ruby Bridges, because I knew Ruby was young, and so I had to go on there and say, not Ruby Bridges, Elizabeth Eckford, who helped integrate Little Rock.
Okay.
So she was part of the Little Rock Nine. But that was in my mind. It was like a couple of days after you did it, and I went, well, see, I know this. So,
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Let me give this to you. On behalf of the IVCC Diversity Team, I want to present you with this certificate for third place in the 2019 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Writing Contest, a check for $50,
Thank you.
and a handshake. Congratulations. You're welcome. Let me get my handy folder here. Oops. Got stuff popping out of my handy folder. Okay. Skip that here. All right, so our second place winner this year is John Delaney, and John wrote a short story called Autumn Leaves. So we'll welcome John up to share his story.
All right, just warning you, bear with me. I'm not the best presenter, but all right. So, autumn leaves. I always seem to find myself here at Kirby Park on such beautiful days. Summer was ending, and fall began to arise. Seeing the red and yellow leaves beginning to flourish with other green leaves always brought a smile to my face. It was like an artist just dabbed a few more colors in with his paintbrush. I could not help but thank God for days like today. If nature could not bring me joy, then seeing my granddaughter, Deborah Johnson, playing with a few dolls and some fallen leaves always would. I was not some random big daddy hanging out around in the park like some friends I have gotten to know in my time of coming here. Deborah and I will walk by them, we exchange a greeting and a few words, and then they keep on going about their gossip. I simply sat on the bench while Deborah just likes to sit and play. She's got a great imagination that there's no room for anyone else when she gets going. Her dolls were some fabric her mama had sewn together, but baby Deborah didn't care. She loved them. If her mama and papa didn't have to did not have to work so much to get bread on the table, they would love to see her on days like this. I guess it's a blessing that I can be here with her. Hey baby, how you doing? I called to her just to check in. Grandpa, she yelled back at me. She was always so serious and feisty. The princess won't be able to stop the witch if you distract her. Sorry baby, I didn't mean to ruin your blast. Her dramatic tendencies were definitely from her mother. Some days it was hard for me to recognize that it was not 30 years ago, and it was my daughter playing, and it was not my daughter playing here in the same park. I was too lost in thought to realize what happened next. A little blonde girl seemed to have come out of nowhere. Her hair was long and curly. It looked so fine and delicate, as though the sunshine had come to life upon her head. She had a pink little bow tie and a pink salmon colored dress. She wore deep black shoes and socks that went up to her legs. In her hands was a baby doll, the kind that Deborah had always wanted. I sat up a little straighter, with my hand on my cane, just ready to get Deborah out of here if something bad happens. Hi, the little blonde baby said to Deborah. My name is Mary. Hi, Mary, little Deborah said without any hesitation, only excitement. I'm Deborah. Want to play Stop the Evil Witch with me? Okay. And the two girls just sat together and played. Deborah was explaining her wild and inconsistent rules to Mary. Mary just seemed to understand it all. She jumped in as though she'd been playing the game for years. Maybe the child's imagination was able to comprehend a little bit more than an old man like me is able to. Two different worlds were colliding right here in front of me, and I could not see anything wrong with it. The way two girls played while the sun shined brightly down upon them. It was as though God was saying that this is what life should be, harmony with one another. The beautiful scene brought a tear to my eye as I thought of the words my father said to me just days before he passed away. Jefferson, I'm not always going to be here, as much as I wish I could help you through the rest of your life. But God is going to call me home one day, so I just want you to always remember that it's okay to be angry. But don't hate. Don't ever hate them. Be angry, but let your love be stronger. Even inspire you to love more. Fight with an open hand and not a closed fist. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying to be passive, because there will become a day when you need to protect those you care about. But love. You will change the world with the way you love others. My father's words were so much easier said than done. But after he was murdered, I hated them for so long. But seeing these two children here, with only kindness and friendship happening before my eyes, I just wished I could have lived my life believing those words more. I just wish that Deborah can grow up in a world where she isn't looked differently because of the color of her skin. It was in these moments that I began to believe, once again, that God would allow us all to thrive and flourish together. But that's all they were. Moments. Mary, a woman called. She looked almost exactly like Mary, except she was far taller and older, presumably her mother. The mother grabbed Mary by the wrist and began to pull her away from Deborah. Don't you play with that girl. You'll catch her germs. Mama, she's my friend. We aren't friends with the help. And I could see tears beginning to swell in little Deborah's eyes. I could not stay silent any longer. Ma'am, excuse me, but please. But my words were short-lived and cut off by the woman's unnecessary rage. Did I speak to you? You have no right to speak to me. How dare you let my daughter play in this filthy park? You should be ashamed of yourself. You filthy. And in my mind, the next word she spoke was blurred. One of pure and unjust hatred. A word I hope would someday find itself at the bottom of hell. But I did feel shame. Not for any reason that the woman wanted me to, but because Deborah should not have to have been talked to like this. A little girl should be exploring her imagination and not witnessing the fury of the closed-minded. I said no more to the woman, as much as I wanted to. If I did, I feared putting my whole family's life at risk. I could not do that. She seemed to take my silence as her own victory. Long live the snake woman who cared so little for human life. At least that's why I envisioned people like her cheering as she walked by. And little Deborah simply looked at me with tears in her eyes. She was my friend, Deborah mumbled, just trying to speak through the tears. I walked over to her and picked her up. I sat her down next to me on the bench while she cried into my arm. She had every right to be sad, and I wasn't going to make her feel as though being sad was a bad thing. I waited until the last teardrop fell, and I began to speak. Do you know why I love autumn? But Deborah did not say anything in response. I love it because I love seeing all the colors of the leaves change. I love the green, red, yellow, and brown all mixed together to create something that was once already beautiful to something even more truly amazing. The painter knew that beauty was not in a single color, but when color is vibrant and plentiful. I don't understand, Deborah said, just barely able to speak again. There are people in the world who don't see how much more beautiful the world is because we're all different. There are people who walk around the earth bitter and angry, and creativity does not flow through them. Do not be like them. Love everyone and love different. God made us all beautiful, and no matter what anyone tells you, you have been crafted beautifully by the greatest artist there ever was and is. We are all like autumn leaves, not beautiful because we are the same, but beautiful because we're all different. Will those people ever not be angry? She asked. I had a feeling this question would come, one that I struggled to have a good answer to, a question that seemed to waver my own faith. But I decided to take my own advice as I thought about the two girls playing once again. In that memory, I could always see a world where hatred was not taught and love flourished. One day, I began to say, one day I think they will be able to let their hatred go. Just like the seasons change, I believe they will too.
So I know Johnny from Christian Student Organization, which he's a member of Transform, but I don't have him in class, so I know nothing about your inspiration for this. So tell us what inspired you to write this story. And
my inspiration just kind of came because I see so much hate in the world, racism and stuff that I feel like shouldn't actually still be around in the world. I think that we're all so beautiful and we're all so different, and it just breaks my heart that people still can be looked at differently just because they look different from somebody else, or they act different, or they wear different clothes. And as I was going to write it, I wanted to write this amazing masterpiece, because I think that's just every writer's dream. Something so mind-boggling and comprehending. I had to think for a little bit, but I actually had given my friend advice saying that it's not always the most complicated things that are what impact people the most. Sometimes it's just two people sitting in a park and having a conversation. Yeah, so that's where the story was born.
Anybody else have questions for John?
Why did you tell it from a particular perspective of the grandfather? That was very unique. And you accomplished it really well.
Thank you. I wanted to tell it from this perspective of the grandfather because I thought it had a little bit different of a take instead of the little girl. He's much older. He's seen a lot more in his life, and he's also had wounds in his life that I didn't necessarily specify, but were obviously there. And seeing the new day of the youth coming together, I think that it added a lot more of a different and unique perspective to the story. If that answers your question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was really good too, because you get that sort of generational perspective, and then adding his father in, you got even another generational perspective, so it's really cool. All right, well, let me count them on up here. And I want to make sure I got the right one, and that one. I'm way more organized than I look, I swear. Okay, so on behalf of the IVCC Diversity Team, I want to present you with this certificate for second place in the 2019 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Writing Contest.
Thank you.
Check for $75, woohoo, and handshake. Thank you so much. So it comes down to this, our final presenter for this year. So our first place winner is Jacob Mcgeorge, and he's going to read to you the poem that he wrote called Alabaster Antibodies. Thank you.
Adjust the microphone, right?
Yeah, right?
All right. When limited by spirit, we came forth to build a body. In the tides of liberation, we decided walls are strong. With the sea between dead memories and this new sunlit wonder, tribes asunder were the only threat which stood amongst the throng. They who danced and prayed the phases of the moon became our foe, and once they taught us what they know, we let them know we thought them wrong. That all their gods and all their customs were the thrills of men below, that they but understood the land in which the white man now belonged. Foreign, they were alien, the body did not want. So to the sickness we spread our disease to thin the native crowd. They were indigenous to grass and sky, but never to our God. So with our alabaster antibodies, they were ushered out. Now pureness was the banner we could fly within our righteous eyes. We were the kings of every organ, from the east unto the west. We had the skills to feed our people and the knowledge to prevail. Yet when the winters came and metals traded, we still suffered tests. Work could not be divided neatly, fairly upon every cell. Some held the wealth, while others scraped by in the trades they cursed aloud. When wages crumbled under labor, and the body stepped to fall, we made a plan to transfuse blood to harvest, plant, produce, and plow. A journey rivaling the Vikings, we took boat and conquered sea, yes, once again, and once again we sailed to conquest victory. Anchor ashore, the home of Moors, we offered gold and goods alike. We loaded all of them below the deck, free work infinitely. Yet worker seemed too much a term, for they weren't promised this like us. They were not civil like our race. They were inferior, no doubt. So we gave every man we stole 3/5 of legal human soul, and with our alabaster antibodies, they were ushered out. For centuries, the black man tended to the gardens, raised the crops, yet bore no fruit for what they'd done. The masters cut them from the vine. Women raising children, cooking dinner, cleaning all the mess. A race of people chained and whipped, 200 years of slaughtered time. The body flourished. Bones grew strong, advancing blind to right or wrong. Machines were built and cities filled. The people cheered from hill to hill, and still the souls bound to their owners cried to a God they'd learned to love. It seemed that these owners shamed their God for which this body first was built. Upon the awakening of hearts, a war broke loose upon the skin. It tore so deep it exposed the soul that suffocated deep within. The men who fought for the miserable won and cut the chains, but they still allowed the alabaster antibodies to bend the rules and sort them out. The body is visible, is it not? The system which prunes where it sees fit. An immigrant after immigrant is filtered, tasted, and promptly spit. Whether black, Hispanic, Asian, Polynesian, even female, not white man, you aren't priority to them. You aren't essential to the plan. You aren't allowed to claim their rights. You aren't as loved by God as them. You aren't as good at anything they took from you. You are condemned. You cannot bask in the sun they earned. You cannot live on the air they breathe. You cannot walk on the ground they tread regardless of what you might believe. The veins and bones and tendons and skin were built as a prison to trap you within. The ligaments pull on your very existence, controlling your movements, creating your sin. The forces who choose who will win, who will lose, are corrupt and tyrannical far beyond doubt. These alabaster antibodies are the forces we need to usher out.
Awesome job. All right, so now you've been a winner before, right? So you entered the contest, when was this?
I think 2016, maybe 2015. I got third place.
Third place that year.
Back in the day, yeah.
So I asked the same. So what inspired this?
The prompt for the contest.
Well, that's a good one.
I was like, oh, well, civil rights, I can write about that. What can I do? And I actually thought about it for a bit. I was writing a short story, and then I decided that I wanted to put way too much in said short story, so I had to switch over to a poem, or else I was just never going to finish it in time. So yeah, there wasn't any eureka moment. I just kind of started going at it from the beginning and historically got through. Came up with the idea of, because there's a common denominator in racism and inequality, and that's the fact that the people in power are stopping those who aren't in power from integrating, from truly being a part of the race, a part of the plan, per se. So I guess I decided to focus on that, and I just went with it. Yeah.
Great. Other questions? How did you come up with alabaster antibodies?
Alabaster is my favorite word for white, and antibodies was just a metaphor for something that keeps things it thinks are bad outside of the whole, even if they aren't always bad. Like people that get transfused organs that are rejected by the antibodies because it's foreign to the body, simply because it's not the same. So I guess I just thought the title was super cool, honestly.
Well, I think it's super cool too, so yeah. I really, really like that. Anybody else? Questions for Jacob? All right. I get my final walk up here. So on behalf of the IVCC Diversity Team, I want to present you with a certificate for first place in the 2019 Dr. Martin Luther King Writing Contest, a check for $100 for you, and my handshake. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for coming. We have more pizza than we know what to do with, so eat. That would be great. Winners, Carrie, would you mind taking a picture of all three? Would you mind doing that? And do they need to sign a release so we can send a press release out or not?
I didn't bring one with, but I can run down and get another.
Okay, yeah. So if the winners wouldn't mind coming up so we can get a picture for the press. And can that release also, Carrie, cover me? No. Yeah, that's all right. That's okay. Never mind. Never mind what I was about to say.
Okay. Do you guys want to stand maybe a little over to the left here? Right about there. Okay.
Is my water bottle in your way?
It's really look frank. I don't know what to do.
I know, right? Okay. All right. I'm going to count to 3, and then I'll take a picture, and I'll take a couple just in case. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3.
If it's okay with Marley, I'm sure it's okay with
I don't know what he's talking about. So funny. Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate it. She needs to go down and get a release, if that's okay. If you guys can wait just a minute longer for her to sign that. Normally the press is here. This is partially my fault. Usually we do it the next week. Somebody had claimed it already for an event, and I went, oh, we can turn it around quickly. And then, I didn't think about the Monday holiday, and so my apologies that our crowd is lesser. It's my fault. So.
I really like the
Friday, this Friday, the in-service is on the 8th.
Yeah.